the back and bring it up. We are planning on handling the first two cases under a consent agenda, which means we will not have a public hearing on that unless someone wants to have those pulled. So if you would like to fill out a card and speak on that, please let me know. Good evening and welcome to the Development Review Commission of June 27th. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has the power to recommend and to render final decisions on specific applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. I'd like to begin this evening by introducing the members of the Commission. To my extreme left is Andrew Johnson, Phil Amorosi, Scott Sumner, Vice Chair David Lyon is to my right, Barbara Lloyd, and Tom Brown, and I'm Chair Linda Spears. With staff tonight, we have Cynthia Jared, Karen Stovall, Diana Kaminski, and Suparna Dasgupta. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of meeting minutes. The meeting minutes of study session regular meeting on May 23rd, 2017. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the study session from May 23rd and the meeting from May 23rd.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Amorosi and seconded by Vice Chair Lyon for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes with the 4 commissioners who were in attendance that evening. The next item we're going to consider is the consent agenda, which consists of 2 items, the subdivision plat for the McClintock Station and the Hayden Lane Lofts. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to discuss those? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the 2 items on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon and seconded by Commissioner Johnson for approval of consent. All those in favor? And that passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is the grant at Papago Park Center.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This development plan review request is for the property located at 1027 West Roosevelt Way. The site is part of the Grand at Papago Park Center Master Plan Development that was initially approved by Council in 2013. The property is zoned MU4 and has a PAD overlay. The property is currently vacant and will consist of a lease area of approximately 8.34 acres of the entire 67-acre master plan. The development will consist of a 9-story office building labeled as Office O on this plan and a 7-level parking garage. This plan also shows a future office building to the north of Building O and a parking garage addition to the east of the current request. Vehicular access is provided off of the private street, which is named Roosevelt Way, and that cuts across the project between Washington and the Loop 202 freeway. Additional access would come from Parkside Drive to the north, which connects to Washington. On the landscape plan, evergreen elm and southern live oak trees are used at the perimeter of the site with red pistache at key points within the surface parking lot. The building is constructed of precast concrete with glass and metal panels at the exterior. Proposed glazing is clear as well as gray and blue tinted glass. The primary metal panel color is white with accenting metal panel colored dark gray and nickel. The parking structures constructed of precast integral colored concrete with 3/4 inch reveals and metal panel accents to mimic the panels on the office building. At staff's request, the applicant has provided a south elevation and rendering of the garage depicting a future phase 2 expansion. And just to note, any expansion of that garage in the future would require a DPR approval. A neighborhood meeting was not required for this application, and no public input has been received. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll ask the applicant to come up.
Chair, members of the commission, for your record, my name is Grady Gamage Jr. My address is 502 South College in Tempe. I'm here tonight on behalf of Lincoln Property, who will be the developer of this project and was the developer of the first phase in the Grand project. From Lincoln are Dave Crumley and Doug Clockey. Also here is Mitch Rosen from SRP Papago Park Center. The building has already been through the SRP Papago Park Center review process, which is extensive with regard to this. Also here is Ms. Vaz from my office. And finally, Bucky and Adam Valenti from Davis, the designers. I'm going to let Adam do most of the talking. This is the first of the mid-rise buildings at the Grand. There are planned to be 4 mid-rise buildings of 9 stories each. It's a little bit of a change from the original, which was 5 buildings of 10 stories each, but it's the same amount of square footage. What's happened as the market has developed here, it is asking for bigger floor plates for tech and financial type users. This is not like the downtown area where smaller floor plates for smaller users is perhaps more appropriate. This is a 360,000 square foot building and a parking garage with just under 1,500 cars in it. As I said, is the first of the mid-rises. It's also the first of the buildings at the Grand that will be south of the canal. So as you come in to the Grand, which I'm sure most of you have done, there's that area where you sort of feel the center where the fountain is. This is just on the other side of that. So it's one of the kind of centerpieces of the project as it opens up. All of the conditions in the report are acceptable. The building is consistent with the design character and theme that's been established at the Grand. But I'm going to introduce Adam and let him talk to you more about the building design.
Grady. I'm Adam Valente from Davis. We're the architects on the job. We're at 74 East Rio Salado here in Tempe. As you can see here, the site is indicated in red, so it's in the southeast corner of the site. This is a view from the freeway, and it kind of shows the total build out with some of the buildings ghosted in the back, so you get an idea of when everything is built. This is a good idea what it's going to look like. And we can come back to this a little bit later, but you can see in this view how we're trying to pick up on some of the geometry and the curve of the building facing the freeway. There's another, that's our corner, the southeast corner of the site. That's where we'll be. And here's the kind of full build out of this portion of the site. And as Grady mentioned, originally we had 5 buildings. Now we're going with the 4 buildings to, number one, increase the floor plate size, but also to provide a little bit more room between the buildings. So less buildings, a little bit more room, a little more open space. The overall site design is based around this courtyard, which is located next to the main kind of amenity of the overall development, which is that round oval waterfall place along the canal. The courtyard is meant to act as kind of a common feature for all the pedestrian and building entries. It's also going to function to provide a space for events. So if you want to do like a 5K run or a farmer's market or hopefully a concerts, things like that, that can be out there on that lawn and be kind of an amenity for all the buildings. This is what the full build out will be for phase 1. So you see our office building, there's the courtyard coming off of the oval, and the phase 1 parking garage. little bit better. This shows the landscape, and again, we've introduced those pistache trees, so you get a real pop of color. That'll be a great kind of entry feature for the all 4 buildings when they're all there, but definitely for phase 1. So view of the building from that courtyard. What we've done is we've got the 2 different colors of glass. So there's the blue color and then the crystal gray color, and then we've broken down the overall massing of the building by separating those 2 colors. So just breaks down the overall massing with smaller masses. We also have the rooftop terrace with that shade feature on top. We've got 360-degree views, but I think a primary view is to the north. You see Papago Park, Camelback Mountain, McDowell's. So that's going to be another event space up there. And then on the ground floor, we also have kind of raised up that first floor and showed the structure of the building. And we have those columns along the front that kind of brings the overall courtyard area down to more of a pedestrian human scale. This shows the elevation from the freeway, and again you see that blue colored glass on the lower elevation, the 2 colors of the glass, the blue and the gray, and then we've introduced a metal accent panel also on that freeway side, again to kind of further articulate the curve of the building and the geometry of the site. Another thing as far as the office glass goes, a nice feature, again, because we have those 360-degree views. It's going to be floor-to-ceiling glass. So from every location on the floor, you're going to get from floor to ceiling just great views in all directions. So that's our presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Commissioner Morosi.
Adam, this is overall the plan. There's going to be residential in here too, right? They're going to be on the other side of the canal.
Correct.
So and I have to presume that once they live there, they're going to be wanting to walk or bike around there. And I like the way the office, the blue tint and the gray tint windows. I think that's a good idea. But then the parking structure seems so minimal and stark compared to that. And if people are going to be living there, I could see if it was just office space and people didn't care, but if people are going to be circulating around that structure and people are going to be seeing it from the freeway, it doesn't seem like you took the same care to blend the 2 together more, or to cover the idea that it's a parking structure. It looks pretty stark. And I don't know about those little, the things that you added on, that those panels, or are they panels?
Yes. And actually, if I could respond with the site plan first. Both parking garages are located kind of towards the perimeter, and they kind of key into the site a little so that you're not, as far as the residential views are concerned from the residential, or if you're moving along the canal, you're always going to see more of a corner versus kind of that flat facade that you might get on the other side. And then we have a lot of landscaping also all along the bottom, all along the perimeter. There's some retention basins in there, so there is some relief on the canal side for the residences and for the people moving along the canal.
But it is 7 stories high.
It is 7 stories high. So the elevation on the bottom is from the freeway. So we have introduced it's kind of that metal frame, so that talks to the building also. One thing we didn't want to do with the garage is have it compete too much with the office building. So we want to use similar elements, but we didn't want it to be kind of the little brother to it. We wanted it to be a different thing, but again, not compete with the office building too much. The frames are separated by the darker color by kind of a more open parking screen, so that gives the building a little bit of movement as far as the eye goes, breaks up that elevation into kind of smaller components, again, similar to the office building, but just done in a different way. So that's what we tried to address that.
the panel to me looks more purple than blue. Is it going to be more blue to blend with the tinted windows, or?
Actually, that's the nickel. That's the same metal panel as is on the office building. We do have a perspective view. So again, we didn't want it to compete. We want it to be a different thing. Also, as far as the 7 stories goes, you know, both intersections that we're between are about 20 feet higher than where we are. So you have on and off ramps coming down. So as far as views from the freeway go, you're really going to be limited until you're kind of right in front of it, parallel to it.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
you're only going to see maybe
So
the
it's
top
colorated.
portion. Yeah, so that's why we brought the metal frame in there and we broke the overall horizontal line of that top floor, again, to kind of give it a little bit of a movement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Summers, comment?
Yet another question on the parking, sorry. You know, I see, yes, this is a big parking garage, but it's also not 7 per 1,000. So I guess I'd just be interested to hear, we just hear, you know, if you're in an office environment and there's the capacity to put in 7 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet, you do it. And it's great to see something that doesn't do that. I'm just curious what you're finding in the market that's leading you to be at about 4, looks like.
So 7 per 1,000 is going to be maybe more of a call center type or customer service oriented building, where you're going to get a lot more people per square foot on your office floors. This is, again, more of a market driven. It's a kind of Class A premium building. So the parking demand is going to be a little bit less than that 7 per 1,000.
Yeah, that's just great to see in this urban environment. Thanks.
Other questions? Commissioner Brown?
I think if I could just respond to that too, because I had the same reaction. I was very interested in this. I think the other thing to realize is that we're sort of at an inflection point of parking here right now. We've had this very high parking demand for a while because of call center type uses and high population density in office space. My sense is that may be starting to change. And while this is more like 5, high 4s to 5 per 1,000, and that's what's been designed for all of these through there. It may well be as this proceeds and we see subsequent phases, those garages are going to get even smaller yet. I think that's sort of the hope everyone has, that as we transition the way in which we move around the city, garages are going to get smaller.
Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. So just to clarify, this perspective on the screen now is about half of the final garage, correct?
Correct.
So I kind of agree with what Commissioner Amorosi said, that it's a lot of long wall. I'm not sure if there's any way you would want to take a bay near the middle and do a notch. I'm not sure how that would break down a little bit, but it's just a lot of concrete. And I'm also assuming that based on the overall site plan that your plan is to take the same 2 buildings, or 2 plus a garage, and perhaps flip them when you do building Z and whatever's that way.
Yeah, it'll be a
Those sides.
symmetrical site plan, yes.
Okay, well, that saves time on design later. So then the next thing I thought of is the fire lane on the south side. There's a hammerhead in front of the office building itself, I assume, to get the right proximity, and it's almost a loop, but then it looks like there's dirt. Will there be some pavement so bicyclists and strollers at lunch can circulate the whole site? Right? You know what I'm saying? There's a path, which I assume is a good way to circulate. And then it ends right there. It ends abruptly halfway across the O building.
The pedestrian circulation, bike circulation, all that's kind of being kept along the canal. And you can certainly loop along the site there. So we're not really encouraging pedestrians and bicyclists to circulate along the freeway. There is also a heavy rail train track that goes along there. So maybe not as nice as the canal and all the effort put into
The trains come by once or twice an hour, maybe, but the cars on the street are pretty heavy. I agree that the central ellipse with the water is going to be a nice feature if it isn't already. But I thought maybe doing the circle, complete the circle. I guess that's.
Well, and it's also part of the overall regional bike pathway system and the park system. So the parks ultimately link up to one another, so I think it's more of a linear park.
So the public's welcome to come by and enjoy that
Absolutely.
park? Great.
Yeah.
Because the Tempe bike community likes to go places and on Tuesday nights. One last question. The project over here, State Farm, has a few cafes at the ground floor, which I've actually used at lunch. It is kind of nice. I don't see any indication. Would the land use permit or the landlord permit cafes on the first floor, or is it going to be office from head to toe?
I'm not sure, I think if that was an option.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, for your record, my name is Manjula Voss. Just to answer the original PAD, there will be a coffee shop at the bottom, and there's also retail, I don't know if you remember the original PAD, but there will also be kind of a retail cluster within the mixed-use development that will have other restaurants. And if that was your question, Commissioner.
I mean, I'm just thinking about lunchtime. It's good to get out. Us office workers need to get out when the weather's not so hot.
Yeah, there's a coffee shop permitted at the bottom. Landlord will permit that.
Okay.
A little sandwich shop. Then across the street is, there's a Starbucks, and there's right across the street there's a Starbucks, and I think there's a Greek place, and used to be a Mexican food place. But there are coming retail options as it starts to build out.
Will they be all chains, or would the landlord encourage local one-off?
The landlord like to encourage local. Yes. Landlord would like to. Yes, we'll still encourage local one-off. I think Romance and the Beans moving. Maybe we can move them to our site.
Okay, one last comment, which is pretty trivial, and I apologize if it bugs you, but we see the office floor plates are really well organized. And you already have, of course, the handicap stall at the end, and it's just the right size for a shower for all those bicyclists who need a place. We've asked other people, and the answer is always, well, we'll do that with the tenant improvement, but we all know that it's much more affordable and logical to have one central. I'm not sure, and that's not a requirement, but it's certainly a nice amenity to try to get into the plumbing core to have a shower at the last stall.
Sure.
That's
something we may consider. I know right now we are pursuing LEED silver, and we're right kind of on the edge of getting all our points, and we want to have a couple extra in there just in case.
Get that one.
So that's an excellent suggestion if we come up a little short.
Thank you.
Other questions? Vice Chair Lyon.
Thanks for being with us, Adam and everyone. I kind of share the concern about the parking garages stealing your thunder. I think as you're heading down the 202, you're going to see an awful lot of parking garage before you see all that nice glass. So I wonder if we were to ask you to revisit the facades of those parking garages, is that something that you'd be open to?
Is your concern about, I guess, westbound traffic on the 202?
It's more about sort of the look of those garages, which I think are going to be very prominent. I think you're going to see more of them as you're driving along. Unless you sort of rubberneck, you're mostly going to notice the parking garages. And I think that it might be appropriate to put a little more care into those leading facades.
I'm wondering if we could satisfy your concern by revisiting the facade of the garage, the Phase 2 garage. So we go forward with this. What you have tonight is only the Phase 1. It's half of what you're seeing there. See how that looks, see how it works. I think the staff has already suggested they'd like to take a relook at the full garage before it's expanded all the way out. And so maybe that would be the best time to do that.
Fair enough. I have just one other question, and this is kind of a trivial thing. Thank you. It's our attachment 16. We have a keynote for a fire-breathing air system.
Yes.
And fire command. I'm not familiar with those. Can you tell us, are those a requirement, and what's that all about?
Are you familiar with the show Game of Thrones?
Right. Yeah.
Actually, when firefighters come to the site, they have breathing apparatus with them, but they sometimes have to refill that, so that needs to be on the outside of the building.
So it's a filling station?
It's a filling station for their breathing apparatus.
Okay, and is that actually required, or is that,
Once you're into high-rise requirements, that's required.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I will open the meeting to the public, and then if we have any questions, you can come and answer those. So is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? I don't have any cards, so seeing none, we will close the public hearing and open it up to commission discussion. Commissioner Sumners.
Thanks for the presentation and for clear answers to all my questions, from my standpoint at least. I also agree with the concerns you've heard about the view from other locations around the site, even though it is from a freeway. But I think what's not clear to me at least, and probably to folks that are looking at this, is the grade differential between the 202 and this finished floor and where the building is and how your landscape is going to look. So I'm not asking you to address that now. I just think when you come back with the next garage, that would be a really good thing to show, because this aerial perspective from bird's eye, nobody sees
Right.
that.
I've got it, so I'm going to show you.
Right?
So maybe, is this where we go here?
You know what the Dow is going to do tomorrow? No?
I can't tell you.
Okay, thanks.
So, all right, so this is a section cut along here. So right at the gore point, essentially, of the on-ramp. And the finished floor elevation of both the garage and the office building is at 1150, so that's that 50 you see here. So I'm calling that +0. So here's our property line. Train tracks are also at +50. I've shown trees. These are about 18 feet tall. These are in the kind of area in between the train tracks and the freeway. So some of them look good, some of them are a little scrubby. The on-ramp is at 54, so it's +4 above our finished floor. The freeway, the Loop 202 is at +7 above our finished floor. And keep in mind that both ends, both intersections are at +70. So they're 20 feet above our finished floor, and the ramps both kind of come down. So until you get into this middle area, you're not really going to see much. From the on-ramp, I've shown kind of your sight line from a car driving there, and kind of going through the top of the trees. And I understand this isn't a full wall of trees along the freeway, but it is pretty well landscaped. You can see in the aerial all along here, ton of trees through there. And then from even further out on the freeway, so you actually won't see much of that garage at all through the trees from the on-ramp. From the 202, you're a little bit further away. You're going to look you're going to see the garage starting at maybe the 3rd floor. So, and that's all the landscape that's in there today as of right now. If you drove down there, I'm also showing, we also have a ring of trees around the perimeter of the garage. So those first 2 floors are going to be completely screened by trees, and then the building will be above it. So you may see this again when we come back through.
And I've been on this ramp almost daily, and when you're doing 70, you don't see anything.
Hopefully you're
You
looking
better
this
not
way.
be watching anything that's not right in front of you. Other comments? Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Brown mentioned in the bigger picture. I mean, I think the overall plan is for 2 million square feet of office, 850 dwelling units, and hospitality component, and then a 6,000 square foot restaurant space. It just seems potentially, hopefully, inadequate to serve that many people. So just to keep that in mind as it evolves. But otherwise, I think it's a nice to see another quality Class A office development come to Tempe and create hopefully a bigger employment base for our community. So thank you.
Other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Caroline.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve case PL 170124, the grant at Papago Park Center, Phase 3, mid-rise Building 1.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon and seconded by Commissioner Sumner. All those in favor? Opposed, and that passes 6-0 with Commissioner Johnson recusing himself from the hearing and vote. The next item on our agenda is future agenda items. Staff.
Madam Chair, members of Commission, the July 11th meeting most likely is going to be canceled. We'll send a cancellation notice sometime this week. And then we will reconvene again on July 25th is the next date.
Any announcements from commissioners? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.